Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Sante and Kenny Kimes? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crimes, then offer my analysis. Sante Kimes was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, on July 24, 1934. She was adopted in 1947 and moved to Carson City, Nevada. In 1952, she graduated from high school. In May 1956, Sante married a man named Lee Powers, but left him and started seeing a man named Ed Walker. She married Ed in November 1957. In September 1962, Sante had a son named Kent Walker. She and her husband divorced in 1969. Sante found a job as a reporter with a magazine and used this position to find a wealthy, romantic partner. It was a magazine that reported on millionaires. In May 1971, Sante interviewed a recently divorced businessman named Kenneth Kimes. He was a motel developer and had a net worth somewhere around $20 million. It's not clear if the couple ever married. There was a ceremony in 1981, but it may not have been legitimate. Some people say weddings are just for show. This couple may have interpreted that sentiment literally. On March 24, 1975, Sante had a son named Kenneth Kareem Kimes. He went by the name Kenny. This is a little confusing because now Sante has one son named Kent and another son named Kenny. Sante and her husband lived a life of luxury. They had homes in exotic locations and traveled frequently. Sante started committing crimes sometime around 1961. She continued this behavior for just about her entire life. Sante committed arson, insurance fraud, forgery, various types of theft, like car theft and shoplifting, as well as many other offenses. This didn't stop just because she was married to someone wealthy. Inexplicably, her husband actually joined in at least one of her offenses. In 1985, Sante and her husband were arrested for violating federal anti-slavery laws. They had imprisoned several teenage girls from Mexico, forcing them to work as maids 7 days a week without pay. Sante was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Kenneth ended up with a slightly better deal. He was permitted to plead guilty to a lesser charge and paid a fine. The authorities didn't think that Kenneth was really active in the crime. Rather, he knew about it and did not take action. Sante was released from prison in 1989 and resumed her life of crime. In 1994, Sante's husband died unexpectedly from an aneurysm. His estate went to his children from a previous marriage. Sante was no longer able to live the high life, and no one was going to protect her. In 1996, she ordered her son Kenny to drop out of college and join her in a life of crime. Now moving to the timeline of the crimes. On March 13, 1998, Kenny and a friend of his drove to the Los Angeles residence of a man named David Kasdan. Sante wanted David dead because he had reported a fraudulent loan that she had taken out. It was for $280,000. Kenny entered the house and shot David twice with a .22 caliber pistol, killing him. Kenny and his friend disposed of the body in a dumpster near the Los Angeles airport. On March 14, the next day, a homeless man found David's foot in a dumpster. The police started looking for both Sante and Kenny in connection with David's murder. The friend who helped Kenny turned against him and talked to the police. The mother-son criminal team, who would later be dubbed Mommy and Clyde, had traveled to Utah, where they purchased a Lincoln Town Car using a bad check. After this, they made their way to New York City. In June 1998, as the police were trying to find them, Sante and Kenny started working on their next scheme. They used the aliases Eva and Manny. Pretending to be Kenny's business manager, Sante arranged for him to rent an apartment owned by an 82-year-old millionaire named Irene Silverman. The apartment was in a $7 million townhouse located on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Irene never let anybody rent from her without first doing a background check. When Kenny showed up to move in, he said he didn't have references, but he could produce some the next day. What he did have was the first month's rent in cash, $6,000. Irene broke her rule and allowed him to rent the apartment. Kenny never produced the references. Several days went by, and he kept dodging Irene. He would avoid her cameras and sneak into his apartment. He would not permit the cleaning staff to enter the unit. Irene became frustrated and started eviction proceedings, but she would never get a chance to finish what she started. On July 5, 1998, sometime between 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m., Sante attacked Irene with a stun gun, and Kenny strangled her. Kenny dumped Irene's body in a dumpster in New Jersey. Later that day, Irene's business manager reported her missing, and other staff told the police the story about the trouble Irene was having with Eva and Manny. That same day, unrelated to Irene's murder, the FBI arrested Sante and Kenny for writing that bad check in Utah. Again, that's how they obtained the Lincoln Town Car. The FBI contacted the police in New York City and told them about the suspects they had in custody. The police quickly figured out that the people they were looking for, Eva and Manny, were the same people the FBI had in custody, Sante and Kenny. The mother and son team had various documents on them belonging to Irene. In the Lincoln Town Car, the police found plastic handcuffs, a 9mm pistol, a box of .22 caliber cartridges, syringes, a sedative in liquid form, an empty box for a stun gun, and books on how to obtain a deed. The trunk was completely empty except for a liner. On July 23, 1998, a hotel security director called the police about a gym bag that Kenny left at the hotel. When the police searched the bag, they found the deed to Irene's townhouse. Her signature had been forged, transferring ownership of the townhouse to a shell corporation set up by Sante. There were notebooks containing Sante's handwriting. She had signed Irene's name repeatedly, like she was practicing to forge her signature. Irene's schedule was written down as if Sante had been watching her carefully for a few days. There was also a shopping list containing items like a stun gun and shower curtain. The police did not know where Irene's body was, but they felt as though they had a pretty good case. Sante and Kenny were charged with 118 offenses in New York, including murder in the second degree, conspiracy, robbery, burglary, grand larceny, forgery, and 29 counts of eavesdropping. This, of course, is in addition to the murder charges they faced in California. As far as the eavesdropping charge, this isn't simply when someone tries to overhear a conversation. Rather, it involves the illegal use of a recording device, gaining access to someone's computer, or similar actions. With a name like eavesdropping, it's easy to understand why there's confusion around this charge. Also, the name of the charge doesn't sound very intimidating. I wonder if, when in jail, Kenny tried to impress the other prisoners with the eavesdropping charge. I could picture Kenny responding to a prisoner asking him why he was in jail. So there was this conversation going on between other people that had nothing to do with me, and I totally listened to it without permission. On February 15, 2000, Sante and her son went on trial in New York. On May 18, they were found guilty on all charges. In June, Sante was sentenced to 120 years in prison. Her son Kenny received 125 years. They were extradited to California to face murder charges for killing David Kasdan. In 2003, Kenny confessed to the murder of David Kasdan in exchange for a guarantee that neither he nor his mother would face the death penalty in California. He told the police that he dumped Irene's body in a dumpster in New Jersey, but he could not remember where. I guess there were just too many areas of New Jersey that reminded him of a dumpster to narrow it down. Kenny also mentioned he murdered a banker in the Bahamas in 1996 because his mother ordered him to do so. No charges were ever filed in that case. Sante went to trial in 2004 and was convicted for murdering David Kasdan. She was sentenced to life in prison before being returned to New York to serve her sentence there. Sante was just 120 years away from getting to spend her life in California, but it would never happen. On May 19, 2014, Sante Kimes died of heart failure in a New York prison. She was 79 years old. At the time making this video, Kenny is serving his sentence in California. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Sante had a number of narcissistic, antisocial, and histrionic personality traits. She was described as arrogant, condescending, pretentious, deceptive, manipulative, seductive, provocative. She had no empathy, and she was not remorseful. She had a need for admiration and a sense of entitlement. Sante demanded to be the center of attention and believed herself to be of high status. On a few occasions, she successfully impersonated the famous actress Elizabeth Taylor. Sante often lied and said that her husband Kenneth was an ambassador. She was able to gain access to high-profile parties using this deception, including a reception at the White House during the Ford administration. Item number 2. Many con artists try to craft clever ways to convince people to do things. Sante was not that refined. She was described as overpowering and bossy. People who interacted with her, including Kenny, suggested that she could just keep talking and talking until they gave in, like she just would not stop and give them a chance to breathe. She manipulated through verbal brute force. Her strategy was simply to wear people down. Item number 3. Sante was an incredibly prolific criminal before she met Kenneth, during her relationship with him, and after he died, when her primary partner in crime was Kenny. She had many short-term sexual relationships with men and often used these relationships to gain money. The men would often look the other way as far as her criminal behavior in order to continue the relationship. Sante had a particular interest in forgery and insurance fraud. Sometimes she would file claims saying that the items were stolen when the items never existed in the first place. Also, she set fires to structures in order to claim losses. Item number 4. When Kenny was young, his mother kept him isolated. He had private tutors and was not allowed to interact with other children. Kenny was eager to play with other children. He wanted to socialize, but his mother instructed his nannies to pull him away when other children approached. Sante explained that Kenny was assessed with genius-level intelligence, and she did not want him socializing with less intelligent people. People described Kenny as timid, strange, and eccentric. When Kenny's mother went to prison for 3 years in the 1980s, his father allowed him to have friends. It was the happiest time of Kenny's life. When his mother was released from prison in 1989, Kenny was so unhappy to see her that he allegedly attacked her. He also allegedly sent a letter to a friend containing money, asking the friend to hire someone to kill his mother. Item number 5. Sante's level of control over Kenny was profound. She was so dominant, coercive, and forceful that Kenny went from hating her to killing for her. I don't think that Kenny ever would have been a criminal if not for his mother. Based on what Kenny did, he needs to be in prison for life, if for no other reason than to protect society. But I think that he was still a victim in this situation. As his mother, Sante had a great deal of power over him, and she used all of it to make him a criminal. I don't think that he had much of a chance in life. Now moving to my final thoughts. Sante had never committed a murder prior to involving her son in her criminal activities. She committed just about every other crime imaginable, but not murder. I think what happened here is that she was able to harness his aggression, which allowed her to expand the types of crimes that she committed. He essentially became a weapon that she was able to deploy. Sante used her incessant verbal aggression to elicit and direct her son's physical aggression. Those are my thoughts in the case of Sante and Kenny Kimes. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.